Okay, I've got kind of a silly one today. This is John A. Keel's The Eighth Tower on Ultra-Terrestrials and the Superspectrum. Now, if you're not familiar with John Keel, you may have heard of the Mothman prophecies. He was the one who wrote that book that the Richard Gere movie was based on. All I remember about that movie is like he's on the phone with the alien and he asks the alien, what's in my hand? And the alien says, chapstick. It was pretty hilarious. But anyway, John Keel wrote about like a lot of mysterious things, cryptozoology, UFOs, the Mothman, the Mothman and things like that. And I've read most of his books. However, most of his books have stories in them that you can't really prove. It's all, he heard it from somebody, unconfirmed reports. So a lot of his stuff is, not real. One of the things I remember reading about in his other books was like when something happens on the national stage, they send out dolls, like kind of plastic human beings. And I looked high and low for a news article that would mention that, but I never found it. So I think he just kind of made it up. However, this book, The Eighth Tower, I think is his most honest and coherent book. It was published in 1975, the same year I was born, the same year also that the Jehovah's Witnesses predicted that the world was going to end. Why did my mom choose to have a baby when she believed the world would end? I don't know. But anyway, even though this book was published 50 years ago, it has so much to do with what we're dealing with now. The UFO drone thing that exploded into the consciousness, the Tic Tacs, all these lights in the sky. This is all about that. And I think the central theory of the book is that there is some kind of beam coming from the ocean or space or whatever that messes with our minds, that causes us to have visions and to see aliens and gods and all these kinds of things. It's in accordance with what Jacques Vallée says, that these are interdimensional beings. They're not physical beings as we can conceive it. So, in this book, he talks about his examples all through history of, Saul on the road to Damascus, people that were blinded by the light. Joseph Smith had his visions. I've had similar visions. And, it's interesting to think about where it could be coming from. There were reports in the news about Havana syndrome, about directed beam weapons. If you look at the patents that the government has for mind control devices, it sure seems like they understand quite a bit about it. MK Ultra, they said, was discontinued. We know that's a lie. I think MK Ultra just went nationwide. It's being practiced against us every day. But anyway, so this is the unknown. Where is this coming from? Why is there no consistent appearance? There's never any proof. There's always these people that have these very convincing visions, but never any physical proof. Well, people that were blinded by the light might get conjunctivitis. Some people who have seen UFOs get like radiation burns and stuff. We are constantly bathed as humans in electromagnetic waves, radio waves, Wi-Fi waves, government waves. The government was doing a HARP project where they're trying to like do high frequency transmissions into space to like punch a hole through the Van Allen radiation belt. Hey, how'd we get through the Van Allen radiation belt the first time we went to the moon? Well, we lost that technology. We'd go back in a second if we could, but we destroyed it. Anyway, so the super spectrum, I think, is something that some people are sensitive to and some people are not. That's why there's such this disparity between experiences. I tend to be sensitive to energies and people's moods and all sorts of stuff. But where's it coming from? Our experiences in life kind of color and flavor our view of the world. And so when unexplained happens to us, we try and like fit it into our view of the world. Now, like Joseph Smith wrote a channeled book. He was obviously channeling it. And people have criticized the Book of Mormon for using like old-timey certain version of the Bible, using the same language that translators of the King James Version used. Well, yeah, duh, because like I'm sure Joseph Smith read that book a bunch of times, and then when the beam was sent into his head, he had to conceptualize it within his known framework. If I had a beam like that, I would conceptualize it differently because I have a different experience. I've read many more books than he probably ever did. And so, you know, we are electric beings in this electric field, the net of gems, you know. So another person that experienced like this kind of thing is a woman named Jane Roberts. She channeled an entity called Seth. And in my opinion, the entity ended up consuming her. She died very young, like at 54, from arthritis. And her mom had it, but I can't help but think that her channeling this weird interdimensional energy had an effect on her health. Like most of these people end up like twisted husks, so beware. So I think the ultimate point of this book, it kind of helps you understand how we're being messed with, we're being farmed, we're being manipulated by humans or by waves or disparate entities or the people that live underground or whatever. But we can't take these things at face value. We just can't. That's something I bring in from the Toltec teachings. Never take anything at face value. Never take what the government's saying at face value. I mean, it's so hard to discern the truth, but books like this are good to read because they expand your mind as to what's possible, but you also have to bring in discernment with it to not completely fall for it. I've never completely fell for these things. A lot of times, you know, like people say that they're abducted by aliens or like they report an experience of it, but then they wake up in the middle, like they're being hypnotized. They wake up and they see like government people in their bedroom, while meanwhile they thought they were on a spaceship. So, you know, question everything, believe nothing. But I think this book is worth reading if you're interested in such things. I think if you're interested in the Fortean type subjects, this is a great place to start. And I also recommend Jack Valley, of course. I think he brings a good sense of discipline to studying this stuff because, you know, science does not acknowledge the unknown. It only deals with the known, the measurable phenomena. But there's so much more to reality than that. I think everyone can see it now. There is no consensus reality. Life is not what it seems, and it's very mysterious. And, you know, this is a little primer on some of the mysterious things that happen in our world. So, you know, go out there and stare at the sky